Hi everyone, welcome back to My Service Dog and Me. I'm Kate, and today I want to talk to you about how to teach your dog to offer eye contact, to offer his attention. Now, every trainer has a different way of teaching this, how to get a dog to look at their handler when asked. Today we're just going to talk about how I do it and why I do it this way. It is not supposed to be a reflection of other methods. So for example, if you like to take a treat and lure it to your eyes so your dog looks at you like this, nothing wrong with that. This is just how and why I teach this the way that I do. Now, every handler has, or every trainer and probably handler has something. Let me try that again. Every trainer calls this something different. Offered eye contact, attention to handler, stationing, the orientation game. There are all kinds of different terms and names for what is essentially the same thing, getting your dog to look at you. I like to call this the attention loop. We'll get to that later. Now, I really like to teach dogs to offer attention. So we're not always asking for it, but they know how to offer it. Why offered eye contact? Because it teaches your dog to offer behaviors. So not only are you teaching your dog to look at you, to pay attention to you, you are also teaching him how to offer you a behavior without being asked, which is an imperative part of a good service dog's foundation. Because later on down the road, you're going to be training behaviors that are going to be so much easier to teach if your dog knows how to offer you a behavior. This practices you and your dog's mechanics with your marker and with your treat delivery. Now, in our last video, I talked about how to charge a marker, how to use a marker, and why you might want to. This is almost always the next exercise that I teach a dog. So the first thing I do is charge the marker. The second thing I do is this attention loop that we're talking about today. This also becomes an important barometer behavior. Now, in our foundations course, which you can find that at the link in the description, we talk about barometer behaviors a lot. We teach a variety of them, we proof them under distractions, and we learn how to use them. What I mean by barometer behavior is a behavior that you can use to very, very quickly gauge how your dog is doing in a training environment. So you can use it to very quickly determine, is he becoming distracted, fearful, stressed, overly excited, or something like this? Well before he quits taking treats, starts to bark, starts to pull, starts to lunge, or something like that. These barometer behaviors allow us to determine, is my dog ready for me to move on with the training session? Is he ready for me to add distractions? Or is he beginning to struggle before something really goes wrong? This offered eye contact becomes the cornerstone of that. It's also the foundation. It's the loop that everything else is built on. So it's the foundation loop that everything else is built on. If your dog can't look at you, you're going to have a hard time training things, or at least pay attention to you. It doesn't necessarily have to be direct eye contact, but you have to have your dog's attention in order to train anything. This attention loop becomes the foundation loop upon which all the rest of them are built. So let's talk about how I train this. You're going to need a charged marker. Again, you can find that in our last video here on the channel. You're going to need a low distraction area, some treats, and potentially a leash so that if your dog tries to leave, you can prevent that from happening. Then you're going to stand still and just wait for your dog to look at you. And because you're in a low distraction environment with nothing else going on and you have treats, eventually your dog is going to look up at you. When he does, you're going to mark. And then you're going to toss your treat on the floor. Your dog's going to eat the treat, and hopefully he'll look back up at you. We're going to get to all these pieces here in a second. I want to show you how this looks, and then I'm going to talk to you about why we do it that way. So this is, I believe, like the second training session or something with this dog where we are practicing this attention loop. So she eats her treat, she's going to look up at me, get a click and a treat, and we're just going to keep practicing this. We're in a very low distraction room. But if she kept trying to leave, I would put her on a leash as well. And she is offering a little bit of a sit, but that's not important. I'm just clicking when she looks up at my face. So this is about a minute long. So that's what this looks like. Now, why do I call it a loop And what do I mean by it's the foundation loop that everything else is built on, and why do I throw the food? That's what we're going to talk about here. So in most training sessions, we tend to think of it this way. Cue, such as a sit, the dog does the behavior, we mark the behavior, and then the dog gets the reinforcement. There's nothing wrong with this, it's just not totally complete. Because in a training session, we're actually working in loops, where we have the cue, the behavior, the marker, the reinforcement, and then we go back to the cue again. This can, of course, be shortened, as you're seeing in this video. We're not using a cue. I'm not asking the dog to look at me. So I have a loop here that just goes behavior, marker, reinforcer, behavior, marker, reinforcer, behavior, marker, reinforcer. Now, I do have an older series of videos on this channel. I'll make sure the link here is accessible, where we talk about loopy training and why it is like the number one thing that just changes everything for my students. Even as an advanced trainer, when I learned about loopy training, it changed everything for me. It is a game changer. So there's more information about this on the channel, but let's stick to this attention loop. So in this attention loop, the behavior is the dog looks up at me, I mark with my clicker, and then I deliver a reinforcer. Now, inside of a clean loop, there are no unwanted behaviors anywhere in the loop. So we have behavior, marker, reinforcer. We don't have sniffing, we don't have excess behaviors, the dog doesn't leave, things like that. There's no hesitation within the loop, so the dog is going to, in this example, look at me, earn the marker, and instantly get his treat, and all the components should feel smooth. So within this loop, the dog is going to look at me, get their treat, look at me, hear the marker, get the treat. Look at me, hear the marker, get the treat. And one loop begins where the last one ended, and we get this nice clean cycle. I'm going to show you some video examples here in a moment. The reason that I throw the treat on the floor in this training exercise is that it resets the dog to start again. It sets them up to begin that loop another time. I throw the treat on the floor, the dog looks away from me to get the treat, and now they're ready to look up at me again and begin the loop again. Now, if your dog already has a default leave it, meaning they don't go for food that is on the floor, you've already taught that, you do not need to unteach this. You can either drop the food into a bowl that they know they're allowed to go to, or you can simply insert that extra cue. So your dog looks up at you, you mark, you toss a treat, and you say, get it. There are lots of ways to work with this. If you have questions about this, definitely check out our free Facebook group, Training Your Service Dog with Confidence, and my coaches and the other members can absolutely help you do this exercise, even with a dog who already has a default leave it. Now, we always get people go, why would I let my dog eat food off the floor when eventually he's not allowed to eat food off the floor? I promise you it doesn't matter. Eventually, we're going to teach your dog not to eat food on the floor unless you've delivered a cue. But remember how in our last video where I talked about markers, I said that the marker tells your dog he can engage with the reinforcer? That's what's going on here. The click has specifically cued my dog that now he can eat the food that I've tossed. And in our academy, this is one of the things that we work through. So in our foundations course, we work through, for example, many exercises like this, where we're not just teaching the dog eye contact, we're also working on your mechanics as the handler, the dog's ability to offer behavior, clean loops, all these things. Then in our academy, we do very specifically teach dogs to only eat food off the floor when the handler says it's okay. So I just want to put that side note in here because we get questions about that very regularly about throwing food on the floor. And I've not seen it backfire. But if your dog already ignores food that's on the floor, you do not have to undo that in order to do this exercise. All right, so I want to show you two more videos of this. So I want to show you the difference between a clean loop and a sloppy loop. So here's a clean loop of me doing this exercise with a puppy, and I'm just going to move me up out of the way here. And we're on the deck. She's on a leash. She looks up at me, click, and then I toss the food. There's no hesitation here. As soon as she finishes eating the treat, she looks right back up at me. I click, I toss the treat, and she immediately eats the treat. So there's no hesitation to look for the treat. There's no hesitation to look back up at me. Here's an example where we went into the grass, and now you are going to see hesitation. So here you're going to see that the loop is less clean. I tossed the food into the grass, and now not only does it take her longer to find the treat, but here you can see she's eating the treat. and she has continued to sniff instead of immediately looking back up at me. So now my loop is not clean anymore. So we're going to practice this until I get the loop to be clean. Now, if I'm really struggling, there's all kinds of other things I can do here to help the dog, right? We can go through our problem solving series, and I'm not going to do that in this video because that's its own video, is kind of problem solving a training session. But in the meantime, definitely you can see how all this hesitation we still have going on in the video. In the meantime, check out the loopy training series that I did. It's a few years old now, but I'll put the link here so you can find it. And that talks about loops and some problem solving within the loop. So you can watch that for now. And again, if you have any questions, check out our free Facebook group, Train Your Service Dog with Confidence, because we can absolutely help you modify this exercise regardless of what's going on with you and your dog, like a default leave it or something like that. So I hope that you are having a great day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.